For a number of years now, I've been a student of the work of Leo Strauss, and my interest in the thinker really is rooted in the fact that a number of my teachers at Northern Illinois University had Leo Strauss was their teacher or was the teacher of students that taught them. So I had a number of professors that were directly students of Strauss's work or students of affiliates of Leo Strauss, such as Joseph Krause. And I really, in my own work, have attempted really to do excavation and archaeology of what that situation was that arose in Germany, what that constitutional crisis was that arose in Germany that led to the overthrow of a republic or a regime like our own that was liberal and was tolerant and had a number of contending and conflicting forces and contradictions like our own age and any other. So I had attempted to go back there and find what it was that happened in Germany that led to the breakdown of civilization, civilized behavior. What led to the rejection of the commandment, "Thou shalt not kill." And it's an important question because it doesn't just happen once in history. It happens again and again in history. And so anybody who says we're beyond that time period is not really paying attention to history. They're not paying attention to the way to the character of society. They're not paying attention to the history of society. They're not paying attention to the fact that it was yesterday that it happened, 12 minutes ago, and no more. They're pretending that because 1933 is, let's say let's round it off to 30, that because that's 85 years ago, that's not yesterday. For history, humanity's history is 5,000 to 10,000 years old. Civilized history. That's 12 minutes ago. So, but it's ignored today because that was something that once it happened, like everything else, like the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, like the destruction of Dresden, like the bombing of London, and the destruction of Europe. During World War II, the minute everybody patches up the windows and puts the bricks back in the buildings and sweeps the streets of the blood of the people that died on Kristallnacht, then everybody wants to forget. But that's just convenient. That's too convenient, and our leaders are like that. If you go over to the 9/11 site. And if you go right where the site is today, right on the site there, everything will look clean. But if you go like 30 yards away, and you go in a corner, like around an alley and in a corner, you'll see dust there. You'll see like dust and debris that's accumulated there. You know what that is? That's like the bones of people's bodies that were burned that day. It's still there. Check it out. Take your finger and pick it up and look at it. So that's 12 minutes ago. But everybody pretends that because the area has been cleaned up now and everybody's swept up, it's all over. And it's not over. It's just the beginning. See, it was just a wake-up to people like my friend and me who complain about our government and complain about its constitution. It's a wake-up to us. It's a wake-up to the people of the United States that Hitler's Germany is today's America, is tomorrow's America, if we don't care. So, when somebody goes to the university and tries to tell the story, and in the future I'm going to be discussing this with Northern Illinois University's president, because when I turned in an essay there, that indicated that Leo Strauss had affiliations with the National Socialist Party in Germany, I received all kinds of discrimination at Northern Illinois University for having done that. And I'm planning to sue Northern Illinois University to the tune of several $1 million for the discrimination that I experienced. So it's not over, and you can't pretend that things like that don't matter, because 3,500 people were burned alive at the World Trade Center. So those things are still active concerns for our society. And there's still issues that at that time, because the story had not been told yet of Leo Strauss's affiliation with National Socialism, and it really wasn't Strauss directly. In this case, it was a number of people who had followed Strauss and, in a sense, had been corrupted, perhaps, by his writings and by their understanding of what philosophy was, that had placed themselves in positions of power, and that were trying to pretend that that story about Strauss that I had to tell in about 100 pages of my notes for my dissertation was not something that was worthy of being said right then, because at that time George Bush was going to Congress every week and asking for hundreds of millions of dollars for the war that was continually going on, and nobody wanted anybody to intervene against that, with the story that many of the people who were affiliated with him had been students of Strauss, and that this story about Strauss's National Socialism connected directly to them and to their knowledge of his affiliation with National Socialism. Is that a conspiracy of Leo Strauss? Not really. It's not on his watch. It's the people who were following him, and the people who had been influenced by him, and the people who chose to arrogate power to themselves and then act as influenced by. Do I believe that Professor Glenn of Northern Illinois University is a National Socialist? No, I do not. Do I believe that Morton Frisch of Northern Illinois University, one of my MA thesis advisors, was a National Socialist? No, I do not. Do I believe that Larry Arnhart of NIU was a National Socialist? No, I do not. Do I believe people that they know and knew were and are? Yes, I do. So they were trying to cover something up and trying to pretend that it didn't matter to anyone, and trying to pretend that whatever discrimination Jeff Newsel experiences there is okay because it's him today, not us. But see, in Weimar it was just the same way. 1 week it was Mr. Heller that was removed from the university today and shot outside. And then next week it was Mr. Kennan. And then the next week it was Mrs. Kennan. And then the next week it was 50 people. And so one always wants to pretend that it doesn't involve you. But it does involve you. Northern's implicated now. And I'm just waiting. So when someone seeks to revive a debate and do a serious archaeological examination of what the facts were in Germany and what the facts were in the United States at that time, and who the people were and what ideas influenced them, I fully believe if we resurrected Leo Strauss, he would say, well, yeah, I did have that affiliation with National Socialism, but I wasn't there. I wasn't in the Bush administration personally. I didn't do anything. I wasn't Rumsfeld. I wasn't Cheney. I wasn't George Bush Jr. Do people really think that if I sat down with George Bush Jr. and asked him about 52 questions about Weimar Germany and Carl Schmitt and Leo Strauss and Hans Kelsen and others, and the positivism that Kelsen defended, and the very subtle Hobbian National Socialism of Carl Schmitt and things like that he'd be able to give any cogent answers to those questions? Absolutely not. He wouldn't know anything about that. But he had people in his administration who could have had somewhat intelligent discourse about those issues, If Francis Fukuyama were asked about it, he'd know something about it. He would have been made aware over the years that there were issues affecting people in Japan that were his ancestors that were murdered when Nagasaki and Hiroshima were razed, and the intelligence IQ spectrum of Asians went way up as a result of it, and Asian civilization now is on its way to turning the whole drive of history towards Asia. Now, due to those acts, would he be aware of such things? Yes, he would. Fully aware. But does he discuss those things in the articles that he writes? Does he publish any books about them? Like an ode to my ancestors who were buried under the ashes of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and to whom I owe something because they are my ancestors, to whom I owe the truth of what happened back then, so that it doesn't happen to another people. Yes, I believe that. But why don't we get it? Because I believe if I spoke to Fukuyama, he'd say, Jeff, if I tried to tell that story, I'd be in a basement like you are, and I wouldn't be able to work. But does that mean that he shouldn't tell that story? Does that mean he should hide behind the red and the black, if you will, and say, well, I've got power over others. I can exercise power over other individuals, so I should? No, it doesn't. But that is the way that people are. That is what they will do. And that is what they do out of a kind of attempt to protect themselves. I had a very humorous doctor once. I brought Francis Fukuyama's text into the doctor's office, and he picked up the text, and it was called The End of History and the Last Man, and it was back in the 80s when Francis had written it. And he picked it up, and he looked at the way Francis's name was spelled, Fukya Yama. And he's like, oh, is that fuck your mama? So he just was just joking, And it was kind of funny. I thought it was kind of funny. But he said, I as a physician, Jeff, he said, I'd love to have the time to read this book. He started to look at what Francis had written and the subject of his book. And he was like, I would love to read that book, but I can't do it. I don't have time. I'm a physician. And it's like that for most people. They're in a profession. Even Francis Fukuyama, who works for think tanks and he writes articles for magazines, and he does things like that, normal things, He's in a normal career. And so he wants to have job security. But so did I. So the idea is you don't sell people out like that. No one should do that to other people. And I wasn't doing it to Strauss. I was merely trying to tell a story to my teachers about something that they have now learned in much better language and in much better by a much better philologist, William Altman, that I was trying to tell them. Whether or not, I don't know if they knew it was true or not. They didn't seem to quarrel with what Altman said, and he said what I said in more stringent terms. But that's the way it is. But this is something that goes on, and it's something that has to be known, or else it can't be avoided in the future. And so that's how I look at it.